I always thought the ER had shown me every kind of chaos. Drunk tourists from Times Square, a Wall Street guy who fainted because his Rolex got scratched, even a teenager who glued her fingers together trying to fix her acrylic nails. But nothing, prepared me for the night my marriage drove straight into my workplace. It was 11:48 p.m. on a Tuesday, early winter. I was halfway through my night shift at Manhattan General Hospital, sipping a lukewarm Starbucks latte and praying no more intoxicated bar fights would roll in. I had just opened my MacBook Air to finish charting when an EMT burst through the sliding doors. "Two incoming," he said. "Car accident. Moderate trauma, ETA 30 seconds. I sighed, shut the laptop, tied my hair up and braced myself. Another typical night, or so I thought. The first stretcher rushed in. Male, early 30s, mild concussion, airbag burns, still muttering incoherently. The second stretcher rolled right behind. Female, similar age, chest contusion, crying dramatically like she was auditioning for a soap opera. I stepped forward, pulling on gloves. "Okay, sir, I need you to." Then the man groaned louder, turned his head slightly, and the fluorescent ER lights hit his face. I froze. It was my husband, still wearing the navy button-down I ironed for him that morning. My brain stalled like a bad Wi-Fi signal. "Wait, what? Dan?" The EMT, completely unaware, nodded helpfully. "Yeah, he kept calling for someone named Honey. Must be his wife?" "Oh," I said, voice deadpan. "He'll definitely regret that in a minute." Before I could process the betrayal punching through my chest, I turned to the second stretcher. The woman wailing like she broke 12 ribs instead of just bruising one. She pushed her hair back dramatically, and I recognized her too. His mistress. Lauren. The woman who once looked me straight in the eye at our Christmas party and said, "You have such a stable marriage. I envy you." Apparently she envied me so much she wanted my husband too. For 3 seconds I just stood there like a frozen potato. Then instinct took over. Professional mode on, wife mode off, murderous mode barely restrained. "All right," I snapped. "Let's get them into trauma 2 and 3. I'll take the male patient." A resident whispered, "Are you sure, Dr. Miller? You look pale." "I'm fine," I said, "absolutely not fine." As we wheeled Daniel in, he blinked up at me, squinting like I was the ghost of Christmas consequences. "Oh, hey, babe," he smiled weakly. "Funny seeing you here." I stared at him. Oh, trust me, I'm laughing so hard on the inside. A nurse standing next to me choked on her gum, trying not to laugh. Daniel winced. "Look, tonight is not what it looks like." "Really?" "Because it looks like a car accident with a bonus episode of Who Wants to Ruin Their Marriage." Even the EMT snorted. But the comedic chaos didn't stop there. From the next room, Lauren shrieked, "Where's my phone? I need to update my Instagram story so people know I'm alive." The entire nursing staff stared at each other. Someone whispered, "Priorities." Then she shouted again, "Also, don't let my hair touch the bed. I just paid $320 for it." At this point, several nurses genuinely had to step outside to laugh. Daniel groaned, "Please, don't let her talk. It makes everything worse." "Oh, don't worry," I said, adjusting his oxygen mask. "I'll make sure she talks plenty." He flinched. He could tell from my tone that I knew everything. And just when the room finally went quiet, his phone lit up. Across the screen, "Babe, where are you? Did she discover the truth?" The nurse beside me whispered, "Ooh, boy." I inhaled slowly. This night shift was about to become the longest and most life-altering of my entire life. My name is Claire Miller, by the way. I'm an ER physician, 33, and until about 12 minutes ago, I thought my biggest problem tonight was whether the vending machine would eat my last dollar. Now my husband was on my stretcher and his girlfriend was demanding a ring light. "Blood pressure is 138/86, the nurse called. Heart rate 104. I glanced at the monitor. Tachycardic. Probably fear of his wife. The nurse snorted so hard she fogged her face shield. Daniel tried to sit up and winced. "Claire, seriously, this isn't..." "Don't move," I cut in. "You may have a cervical sprain. We're ordering a CT of your head and neck, chest x-ray, and labs." He swallowed. "So you're my doctor tonight?" "Lucky you," I said. "You get top-tier care and marital consequences in one convenient package." It was just past midnight now. The ER hummed under fluorescent lights, monitors beeping, stretchers rolling. From Trauma 3, Lauren's voice rang out again. "Can someone bring me a mirror? I need to see if my contour is still okay. I had a photo shoot tomorrow." One of the interns whispered, "Should we triage the injuries or the ego first?" I pretended not to hear as I checked Daniel's pupils. "Any loss of consciousness?" I asked. "Maybe a little. Everything went black when the airbag deployed," he said. "We were just driving back from—" "Let me guess," I said. "A Bible study." He winced harder than when we moved his neck. A radiology tech appeared. "CT scanner is ready." We transferred Daniel, fastening straps. As they wheeled him toward the hallway, Lauren's stretcher rolled past in the opposite direction. Her eyes widened when she saw me walking beside him in my white coat, stethoscope around my neck, ID badge that clearly read, "Dr. Claire Miller." "You're the wife?" she squeaked. I smiled politely. "And you must be the passenger." She clutched her blanket. "He told me you two were basically separated." I lifted an eyebrow. "That's funny. My tax return disagrees." Behind me, one of the nurses coughed into her chart to hide a laugh. Truth was, warning bells had been ringing for months. Late meetings, phone face down on the table. Just a coworker, named Lauren, showing up in Instagram tags from after-work drinks. I had pushed the unease down because residency had trained me to function on denial and 3 hours of sleep. We reached the CT suite. I handed Daniel off to the tech. "Any metal on you?" the tech asked. "Just my wedding ring," Daniel said quietly. I stared at it. The gold band he'd slid onto my finger 8 years ago at a small ceremony in Central Park, back when we used to share cheap pizza and watch the Manhattan skyline like it belonged to us. "Leave it on," I said. "We'll see if it survives the night." While they slid him into the scanner, my pager buzzed. Another incoming patient. The ER didn't stop just because my life had imploded. On my way back, I passed trauma 3. Lauren was holding her phone, even though we'd clearly told her no filming. "Seriously?" I said, stepping inside. "Put the phone away or I'll have security babysit it." "But my followers will live," I replied. "Your ribs, on the other hand, need rest." She pouted. "Are you going to punish me or something?" I kept my tone even. "I'm going to treat you like any other patient who was in a reckless nighttime collision." Then I added, just loud enough for her to hear, "The punishment part comes later. For bad life choices, not medical ones." Her mouth fell open. For the first time that night, Lauren stopped talking. And that silence felt like the first normal vital sign I'd seen all shift. By 12:47 a.m., the ER had settled into that strange quiet where everyone knows chaos is just waiting around the corner. I stood at the central workstation, reviewing the trauma labs coming in for both Daniel and Lauren. Daniel's labs: elevated stress hormones, mild dehydration, glucose a little high. Lauren's labs: normal, except for an impressively high blood alcohol level. I muttered, "So she was drunk? And he was driving her home." A nurse beside me whispered, "Plot twist or predictable twist?" I didn't answer, not out loud. My pager buzzed again, CT ready, and I headed toward radiology. The hallway smelled faintly of disinfectant and cold air from the vents, the kind of sterile emptiness that usually calmed me. Not tonight. The tech met me outside the CT suite. "Scans clean for fractures," he said. "Some soft tissue swelling, but no internal bleeding." I nodded automatically. "Thanks." Inside, Daniel was sitting on the edge of the scanner, looking like a man who'd accidentally run over his own alibi. He lifted his eyes to me. "Claire, we should talk." "We will," I said, checking his vitals on the portable monitor. "After I finish treating you, and after you stop lying." He winced. "It's not what you think." "Oh, fantastic," I said dryly. "Let me guess the updated version." He rubbed his face. "We had dinner. Just dinner. She needed a ride home, and the car skidded. And her blood alcohol level is high because—" He blinked. "She was stressed?" I stared at him. "So stressed she drank half a bar?" One of the radiology techs overheard and wheezed into his mask. I kept my tone clinical. "Daniel, I am your treating physician right now, not your wife. Don't insult my intelligence in either role." He didn't answer. Instead, he looked down at his hands, at the wedding band he hadn't taken off. "Not yet." We got him onto a transfer stretcher and pushed him toward the ER again. The wheels squeaked down the hall, and I could hear Lauren's voice before we even reached trauma 3. "Hello? I asked for water with no ice. This cup has 1 ice cube floating in it." A tired nurse muttered, "I'm going to throw myself into a linen cart." Daniel groaned. "Can you tell her to stop talking?" "Oh, sweetie," I said, "that's the one thing I will absolutely not do for you tonight." When I entered her room, Lauren looked dramatically relieved. Oh, thank God, it's you, the wife/doctor. I need to report. I held up a hand. Before you continue, just know that everything you say is being documented in your chart. She gasped, clutching her chest like a Victorian widow. Even the emotional trauma I suffered? I blinked slowly. If emotional trauma from bad decisions counted, half of Manhattan would be in the ICU. A nurse nearly dropped her pen. Lauren pouted. Fine. Then can I at least fix my hair? Someone opened the curtain earlier and the lighting was just awful. It's 1 a.m., I said. There's no lighting good enough for what you're going through. The nurse behind me coughed violently to hide her laughter. I examined her bruising, checked her ribs, and updated her chart. Everything was consistent with the crash. No deadly complications, no immediate danger. Timeline check. Accident at approximately 11:30 p.m. EMS arrival 11:48 p.m. Trauma labs 12:15 a.m. CT results by 12:45 a.m. Everything aligned. When I stepped out, Daniel was waiting in Trauma 2, sitting up, hand pressed to his chest. Claire, please, talk to me, I inhaled. After your observation period, and after Lauren stops requesting spa services. Suddenly, an orderly rushed by carrying a portable ultrasound machine. He looked at me and whispered, just a heads up, Lauren is asking if we can ultrasound her feelings. I shut my eyes. This night was ridiculous, heartbreaking, infuriating, and somehow still the funniest shift I'd had in months. But beneath the humor, beneath the chaos, something colder settled inside me. The first clean, sharp crack running through the life I thought I had. This was only the beginning. By 1:32 a.m., the ER had shifted into its usual late-night rhythm. Fewer walk-ins, more serious cases, and just enough delirious patients to keep things entertaining. I stood at the central desk reviewing updated notes when security buzzed the intercom. Dr. Miller? NYPD wants to speak with you about the 2 trauma patients from the car crash. Perfect. Because what this night needed was law enforcement. 2 officers approached, both looking exhausted, matching the energy of the night shift. The older one flipped open a notebook. Evening, doctor. We need to confirm injuries and blood alcohol levels for our report. I nodded professionally. Patient A, Daniel Miller, mild concussion, cervical strain, negative CT. Patient B, Lauren Hayes, rib contusion, high BEC. The younger officer raised an eyebrow. High as in, oops, I had a cocktail, or high as in, full Vegas weekend? I answered, let's just say her liver filed a noise complaint. The older officer scribbled notes. And who was driving the vehicle? I inhaled slowly. Here it was, the moment the truth had to be spoken aloud. Daniel Miller, I said. My husband. Both officers froze. They looked at each other, then back at me, then at my ID badge. The younger officer whispered, oh, damn. Behind us, a nurse cackled so loudly she had to pretend it was a cough. The older officer cleared his throat. We'll come back for signatures later. Great, I said cheerfully. I'm here all night, unlike my marriage. They left in a hurry. As I walked toward Trauma 2, my mind replayed the last year, late-night office parties, unexplained work trips, and one bizarre moment when I found a Cartier bracelet receipt in his jacket pocket, even though he'd gifted me nothing. Back then he'd said, oh it's for a coworker's birthday, and I foolishly believed him. When I stepped into the trauma bay, Daniel looked pale but conscious, the monitors behind him blinking steadily. He glanced up. Claire, please, can we talk now? I crossed my arms. You have 2 minutes before I check on actual patients who deserve sympathy. He swallowed. I didn't cheat on you. I stared at him. Daniel, you were literally in a car with your mistress when you crashed into a traffic light. He rubbed his forehead. It wasn't like that. Oh? Enlighten me. Were you 2 rehearsing a carpool karaoke duet? He huffed. We were leaving a co-worker's dinner. She drank too much. I was driving her home. And you didn't think to call an Uber? They were all busy. There are 14,000 Ubers active in Manhattan at all times, I said. He opened his mouth, closed it, then, quietly. I didn't want anyone to see me with her. That sentence hit me like a slap. So you cared more about being seen, I said slowly, than about doing the right thing. Claire, I swear I never meant for anything to happen. The accident was inevitable, I said, much like the rest of this disaster. Before he could respond, a scream erupted from Trauma 3. My face! I can't feel my face, a nurse whispered. She's literally touching her face while saying that. We rushed over. Lauren was, in fact, touching her own cheek, dramatically gasping like she was on a telenovela. "What's wrong?" I asked, switching back into medical mode. She sniffled. "I think the bruise is going to make me look asymmetrical." I blinked. "Ma'am, you survived a crash. You'll live. But will my selfies?" I exhaled. "Yes." Tragically, yes. As the nurse wrapped her ribs, Lauren's phone buzzed. The screen lit up just long enough for me to see the message. "We need to talk. She might know." I froze. That wasn't Daniel's number. Someone else was involved, someone Lauren was scared of, and suddenly, this wasn't just an affair. This was something bigger, a new crack opening in the story I thought I understood, and the real twist was only just beginning. The ER always has a certain hum at 2:10 a.m., an odd mix of exhaustion, coffee breath, and the distant beeping of machines that sound like they're judging everyone's life choices. But tonight, that hum felt louder, sharper, like the building itself knew something was about to break open. I stood outside Trauma 3, staring at Lauren's phone screen. "We need to talk. She might know." Not from Daniel, another man. I tucked the phone back exactly where it had fallen on her blanket, just as she looked up, eyes glossy. "Is something wrong?" she asked, pressing the ice pack dramatically to her ribs. "Oh, sweetie," I said with professional calm, "something is always wrong. It's a hospital." A nurse beside me almost choked, trying not to laugh. I started updating her chart when she suddenly said, "Do you think Daniel will come check on me?" I stopped writing. "He's in a neck brace and concussion protocol." "That's not a no," she whispered, nodding as if she'd solved a mystery. I inhaled slowly. "Ma'am, please relax, for your lungs' sake." She nodded weakly but then sighed with the melodrama of a Shakespeare actress. "I just hope all of this doesn't ruin my relationship." My pen froze midair. "Your what now?" "My relationship," she repeated, "with Marcus." I blinked. "Who is Marcus?" She flopped back on the bed like she'd fainted. "My boyfriend." I stared at her for a full 3 seconds, clinically and spiritually confused. "So," I said slowly, "you have a boyfriend, but you were with my husband, and the accident happened while you two were?" "Practicing a presentation," she said quickly. "For work." I fought the urge to question my entire medical career. A nurse leaned in and whispered to me, "Do we need a whiteboard to track her lies?" I shook my head. "No. We'd run out of markers." But Lauren wasn't done. "Oh God," she whispered, clutching her hair. "If Marcus finds out I was with Daniel, he'll kill me." I narrowed my eyes. "Why would your boyfriend care?" She froze, lips trembling. And then, finally, the facade cracked. "Because Marcus doesn't know about Daniel," she whispered. "He doesn't know anything." Before I could ask another question, security radioed, "Dr. Miller, there's a man in the lobby demanding to see a patient named Lauren Hayes." My stomach dropped. "Marcus?" I rushed to the entrance. A tall man in a sharp suit paced aggressively, clutching an expensive leather briefcase. He looked like the type who threatened baristas for getting his latte wrong. When he saw me, he marched over. "Where is she?" His voice was low, furious. "Is she all right?" He looked insanely stressed, sweaty forehead, loose tie, jittery hands. And behind him, on a bench, was an Amazon box and a Kindle, like he'd grabbed random objects while running out the door. "Sir, are you Marcus?" I asked. "Yes," he said. "I'm her boyfriend." "Then we need to talk privately." His jaw tightened. "Is she hurt?" "Injured but stable," I said. "But perhaps emotionally unstable is more accurate." He dragged a hand down his face. "Of course she is. She told me she'd be home by 10. Then she stopped answering. I knew something was wrong." "Something is definitely wrong," I muttered. Marcus followed me down the hall. He was steaming, angry, worried, embarrassed, and talking under his breath. "I swear, if she's been lying again, this is the last time." "Again?" I repeated. He sighed bitterly. "She does this. She disappears. She plays people. She makes messes I'm left dealing with." Oh, so Lauren wasn't just a mistress. She was a serial disaster. When we reached Trauma 3, I paused outside the door. "Before you go in," I said, "you should know she wasn't alone during the accident." He clenched his jaw. "With who?" I opened the door. Daniel looked up from Trauma 2, directly across the hall. Lauren gasped. Marcus froze. And in the middle of that messy, chaotic square of infidelity, I stood between all three of them, realizing this wasn't just my husband's betrayal. It was a web. A messy, tangled web. And I wasn't the only one about to cut myself free. By 2:55 a.m., the ER was no longer a hospital. It was a live-action reality show with medical supervision. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as I stood between the three people who had collectively destroyed my night and, honestly, a chunk of my sanity. Marcus stared at Lauren like he'd just discovered his tax return had been filed by a raccoon. Lauren stared at Daniel like she expected him to rescue her. Daniel stared at me like I held the detonator to his future. And me? I just wanted a fresh coffee and divorce papers. Claire, Daniel began carefully, this isn't what it looks like. Marcus snapped his head toward him. Oh, really? Because it looks exactly like a man who crashed a car with someone else's girlfriend. Lauren gasped dramatically. Marcus, lower your voice. I'm injured. You're injured? Daniel barked. You grabbed the steering wheel. Lauren crossed arms like she was offended by physics. I saw a yellow light. I thought you should stop. It was green, Daniel yelled. I raised a hand. Okay, everyone calm down before my nurses write all of you up as psychiatric consults. A nurse nearby immediately pretended to look busy, but stayed within listening distance. This was premium ER entertainment. Marcus pointed at Daniel. Why was she in your car? Daniel pointed at Lauren. Ask her. Lauren pointed at Marcus. Ask him. Marcus slowly turned toward her. I am asking you. Lauren blinked innocently. I was networking. Marcus nearly ruptured a vessel. You were networking in his car at midnight? She hesitated. The lighting was romantic. I massaged my temples. Romantic lighting doesn't exist in a Honda Civic with a cracked windshield. Daniel muttered. It wasn't cracked before tonight. The nurse snorted so loud she had to walk away before she burst out laughing. Timeline check. Accident at 11:30 p.m. EMS arrival 11:48 p.m. CT and labs done by 12:50 a.m. First police inquiry around 1:30 a.m. Marcus arrives around 2 a.m. Everything still aligned perfectly. Marcus paced in a small angry circle, ranting under his breath. I knew it. I knew she was lying again. Work dinner, presentation practice, I won't be late. Lauren groaned. Marcus, can we please not do this in public? People are staring. Yes, I said, because the entire ER can hear you. A janitor sweeping nearby nodded vigorously. Suddenly Daniel pulled off his oxygen mask. Claire, for the love of God, I need to talk to you privately. I folded my arms. If it's a confession, we can do it here. Saves me paperwork. He ran a hand over his face. I made mistakes, all right, but I swear I didn't sleep with her. Lauren gasped, hands dramatically at her chest. Wow, rude. You told me you did, Marcus shouted. She froze. I might have exaggerated. Might have, Marcus echoed, voice cracking so hard it echoed down the hall. Daniel whipped toward her. Lauren, what did you tell him? That we were involved. We were not involved. She shrugged. Emotionally, maybe. I stared at her. Ma'am, you met my husband 4 times. So, she said. Feelings are fast. I inhaled deeply. A nurse whispered behind me, is this real life? Marcus turned toward me suddenly. Doctor, would you say her injuries might affect her memory? I answered honestly. Unfortunately, no. He swore under his breath. Then, because apparently this night needed a cherry on top, the older NYPD officer returned. Dr. Miller, we need signature confirmations for the DUI section. He stopped mid-sentence when he saw the scene. Daniel half sitting up, neck brace askew. Lauren clutching her blanket like a distressed Disney princess. Marcus pacing like a caffeinated attorney. Should I come back? He asked. No, I said. Please, stay, I insist. Lauren pointed at him immediately. Officer, I wasn't drunk, I was dehydrated. He checked his notes. Your blood alcohol level was 16ths. She gasped. Is that good? Marcus buried his face in both hands. At that exact moment, Daniel whispered, Claire, I think I really messed up. I finally turned toward him fully. No, I said softly. You didn't mess up. His eyes widened with fragile hope. You detonated the entire building. The nurse next to me whispered, God, that was poetic. And that, right there, was the moment Daniel realized the ER was no longer the worst part of his night. I was. By 3:40 a.m., the ER air felt thick, like even the oxygen knew drama was unfolding. A few nurses pretended to restock cabinets that absolutely did not need restocking, just so they could keep watching the chaos. Even the security guard leaned casually against the wall like he had paid for front row seats. I stood between Daniel, Lauren, and Marcus, 3 adults behaving like unmedicated teenagers, when the NYPD officer cleared his throat. All right, he said, flipping a page on his clipboard, we need to clarify who was driving and why the vehicle lost control. Lauren lifted her hand like a student in kindergarten. I can explain. Everyone collectively braced themselves. I saw a raccoon, she said confidently. Daniel stared at her like she had confessed to murder. We were on Fifth Avenue. There are no raccoons. She frowned. Maybe it was a fancy raccoon. Marcus whispered to me. I think her frontal lobe is bruised by stupidity. I coughed to hide a laugh. Ma'am, I said gently, please answer truthfully. She hesitated. Fine. I panicked because Daniel said something upsetting. Daniel's head snapped toward her. What did I say? Lauren adjusted her blanket dramatically. You said you weren't leaving your wife. The hallway fell silent. Marcus blinked. The officer raised an eyebrow. A nurse whispered, Ooh! Daniel looked like someone had unplugged his brain. I never said that, he sputtered. Lauren gasped like a Victorian widow. You did? You said this is a mistake and I can't ruin my marriage. Marcus swore. So you were involved. Daniel shouted, emotionally involved apparently. Not physically. Lauren pouted. It could have become physical. I stepped forward. Enough. Every head snapped toward me. You, I pointed at Daniel, lied to your wife and crashed a car. You, I pointed at Lauren, lied to everyone and crashed multiple relationships. And you, I pointed at Marcus, need therapy for choosing this woman voluntarily. He nodded solemnly. I know. The officer cleared his throat again. I also need to inform you, Daniel Miller will likely face charges for reckless driving and transporting an intoxicated passenger. Daniel's face drained of color. Wait, charges? I crossed my arms. Actions, consequences, welcome. Lauren gasped. What about me? I'm the victim. Your back was double the legal limit, the officer said. You may also face charges. She slapped a hand over her mouth. Marcus, save me. Marcus blinked. From what? Your own choices? Absolutely not. The officer turned to me. Doctor, for legal documentation, we need confirmation that both patients are medically stable for questioning. They are, I said calmly. Very stable, unfortunately. As the officer stepped aside to finish paperwork, Daniel whispered urgently, Claire, please, can we talk privately now? I finally nodded. We stepped aside into an empty hallway near the supply room. The fluorescent light flickered, a perfect metaphor for our marriage. He swallowed. I messed up. I know that, but I swear I didn't cheat. I didn't sleep with her. Nothing happened. I was trying to be a good person. I stared at him. Since when does being a good person involve hiding things from your spouse? He winced. I thought I could handle it. That's what every patient says before they accidentally staple themselves, I said. He cracked a tiny, nervous smile. I deserve that. No, I said, you deserve honesty. He exhaled shakily. Okay, here it is. And for the first time that night, Daniel looked genuinely afraid. Lauren threatened to report me to HR if I didn't give her rides home. I blinked. HR? She said I made her uncomfortable at work. My eyebrows shot up. Did you? He shook his head violently. No, she was the one flirting. She cornered me at office events. She kept hinting she'd make things difficult if I didn't help her. I stared at him, trying to assess whether this was truth, panic, or delusion. Claire, he whispered, I swear, I think she was setting me up. I heard footsteps behind us. We turned. Lauren stood in the hallway, silently, watching us. And her expression, calm, cold, calculating, was the first time all night she looked deadly serious. The mask had dropped, and suddenly I realized I wasn't just dealing with a mistress. I was dealing with someone who knew exactly what she was doing. Lauren stood in the hallway like she'd materialized from thin air. The fluorescent light hit her face in a way that made her look less like a frightened patient and more like someone who had just stepped out of a courtroom drama. Calm, calculating, almost bored. Daniel froze next to me. I straightened my shoulders. Lauren tilted her head. So, you finally told her? Told me what? I asked, keeping my voice steady. She smiled, not the shaky, dramatic little bird smile she'd been doing all night. No, this one was sharp. About HR, she said. About our misunderstanding. Daniel stiffened. It wasn't a misunderstanding. You threatened me. Lauren sighed like she was tired of our collective incompetence. Daniel, you really shouldn't exaggerate. And Claire, don't take him too seriously when he's emotional. He cries when he sees those dog rescue videos. I do not, Daniel said indignantly. I blinked. Focus. Lauren clasped her hands behind her back. Fine, here's the truth. She took a step closer. You two have a picture-perfect marriage. He's handsome, you're smart, you probably compost together and talk about taxes during dinner. I deadpanned. We barely have time to eat dinner. Exactly, she said brightly. He's lonely, vulnerable, and he needed someone to uplift him. Daniel snapped. I never needed you. Lauren shrugged. You kept giving me rides. Because you threatened my job. Oh, please, she rolled her eyes. If I wanted to ruin your career, I'd do it properly. That sentence was a little too honest. Marcus suddenly appeared behind us, arms crossed. Oh, great, the villain monologue. Lauren's face twitched. Marcus, please, this is between me and... No, he said, this is between you and your addictions. She gasped. I don't have addictions. Yes, you do, Marcus said calmly. Attention, drama, manipulation, men, chaos, the list is alphabetical. A nurse passing by snorted so loudly she almost dropped her tablet. Lauren glared at him. You never support me. I paid your rent for 9 months, Marcus replied. I have receipts. I held up a hand. Okay, enough. We need the truth, all of it. Lauren hesitated. Her eyes flicked from me to Daniel, to Marcus, and then to the police officer down the hall. And just like that, her entire posture shifted. She straightened, her voice lowered, her expression flattened. Fine, she said. You want honesty? Here it is, when completely still. I filed a preliminary complaint with HR last week, she said calmly. Not against Daniel, against my supervisor. Daniel's jaw dropped. What? Lauren continued. But if my supervisor got fired, they would promote someone else, someone trustworthy and ethical, someone like Daniel. Marcus blinked. Wait, are you saying? I needed leverage, she said, so I created proximity, perception, a story people would believe. I stared at her. You tried to frame him. She shrugged. A little, but only because he didn't cooperate. Daniel choked. Cooperate? You wouldn't help me, she said simply. You wouldn't remember things wrong for HR. So I had to make it look like you were involved. I felt my stomach drop. She wasn't unhinged. She wasn't drunk. She wasn't lovesick. She was strategic. Marcus whispered, Lauren, this is criminal. Lauren looked offended. It's not criminal. It's career navigation. The NYPD officer approached slowly, as if walking toward a wild animal. Ma'am, he said, are you admitting you were attempting to manipulate a coworker into supporting a false HR claim? She blinked, confused. I'm explaining my process. Your process, he repeated, writing rapidly. Lauren suddenly realized what she'd done. Her face drained of color. No, wait, I didn't mean. Too late. The officer nodded. We'll need an official statement. Daniel exhaled shakily. Marcus whispered, this is insane. A nurse muttered, this ER shift is better than cable. I looked Lauren dead in the eye. For someone who wanted to destroy my husband, I said, you just destroyed yourself. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. For the first time all night, Lauren Hayes was silent. And somehow, that silence felt like the first breath of justice. By 4:35 a.m., exhaustion had settled over the ER like a heavy blanket, except in the little corner where 4 lives were unraveling in high definition. The police officer escorted Lauren toward a quiet consultation room to gather a formal statement, but she kept twisting around to look at us like we were abandoning her on a sinking ship. Daniel sat on the stretcher in trauma 2, staring at nothing. Marcus leaned against the doorframe, rubbing his temples like his soul needed Advil. I stood at the nurse's station, finishing documents with the kind of dead-eyed focus only an ER doctor at dawn could achieve. A nurse approached me. Doctor, do we need popcorn for this shift? Please don't encourage them, I said. This is a hospital, not Netflix, she grinned. Netflix wishes they had this. Before I could respond, the policer returned. Dr. Miller, he said quietly, you should hear what she's saying. Daniel's head shot up. Am I being accused again? Not this time, the officer said. This time, she accused her supervisor, her CEO, her HR rep, and also the valet guy. I blinked. The valet guy? The officer nodded gravely. Apparently he parked her car suspiciously. Marcus whispered, she needs a therapist, not a boyfriend. Daniel muttered, or a GPS. I exhaled. Let's go. We walked to the consultation room. Lauren sat at a table, arms crossed, looking simultaneously furious, terrified, and deeply inconvenienced, like someone who ordered almond milk and got oat milk instead. She jumped when she saw me. Claire, thank God. You need to help me. I'm your doctor, I reminded her, not your lawyer, or your alibi. She pointed desperately at Daniel. Tell them I wasn't trying to. Daniel interrupted. You literally admitted you tried to frame me. I was venting emotionally, she cried. Marcus coughed. You vent with a journal, not law enforcement. Lauren ignored him. If you tell them Daniel and I were close, they won't think I'm unstable. I stared at her. I'm not lying for you. Her eyes widened, filling with frantic tears, the kind that weren't real, but were definitely dramatic. You're just like everyone else, she whispered. Ungrateful. I blinked. Ungrateful for what? For my vulnerability, she said. I shared so much with you tonight. I glanced at the officer. He wrote something down so fast his pen squeaked. Lauren suddenly slammed her hand on the table. Fine, charge me, see if I care. The officer nodded. Glad we're on the same page. Her mouth fell open. That's not what I meant. But the officer just gestured for another cop. We'll need to file a report. Possible false claims, coercion in the workplace, and contributing to reckless endangerment. Lauren's face went sheet white. That's not fair. I folded my arms. Fairness wasn't your priority tonight. She turned to Daniel. Say something. Daniel shook his head slowly. For the first time in this entire marriage, I have nothing to say. Lauren let out a strangled wail. Marcus? Marcus sighed. I'm breaking up with you officially. Please don't contact me, or my plants, or my mom. Even the officer paused. Your plants? She sent my cactus a birthday card, Marcus whispered. I nearly lost composure. Lauren's eyes darted around the room. She realized finally that there was no path out. No manipulation left, no lie big enough to save her. And then she crumbled. A full-body collapse, sobbing, shaking, dramatic enough to get an Oscar nomination. But beneath it, there was something real. Fear, consequences, exposure. As officers guided her gently toward the hallway, she turned back one last time. You're all ruining my life, I said quietly. No, you did that. They escorted her away. Silence filled the room. Daniel sat down slowly, face pale. Claire, I'm so sorry. I never thought. I held up a hand. Don't. Not yet. Marcus straightened. Doctor, if it means anything, I believe him. He didn't look at her the way she looked at him. She was running a game. I nodded but said nothing, because forgiveness wasn't the question. The real question was whether my marriage could survive the truth now that it had finally come out, and whether I even wanted it to. By 5:50 a.m., the first hint of dawn crept through the tall windows of the ER waiting room, staining the floor tiles with a pale gold glow. The night shift staff stretched their backs, sipped the last drops of cold coffee, and whispered to each other about the wild drama in Trauma 2. It was almost time for me to give sign-out to the morning team. Almost time for my shift to end. Almost time for my marriage to face the sunrise. Daniel sat on the stretcher, hands folded, neck brace still in place, looking like a man who finally understood the weight of every choice he'd made, and every choice he hadn't. Marcus stood nearby, leaning against the wall, calmer now. He gave me a tired nod, an unspoken gesture that said I'm rooting for you, in whatever direction I chose. A nurse approached me quietly. Doctor, do you want me to clear the room for you too? I shook my head. It's fine, we'll talk. Daniel swallowed hard as I stepped into Trauma 2. Claire, he said softly, please sit with me. I can stand, I replied. He nodded, accepting it without protest, finally understanding he no longer got to ask for comfort. Timeline check. Accident at 11:30 p.m. CT plus labs by 12:50 a.m. HR confession around 3:50 a.m. Police processing through 4 to 5 a.m. Now nearly 6 a.m., both patients clinically stable and cleared for discharge. Everything lined up perfectly. Daniel rubbed his forehead. I meant what I said. I never cheated. Not physically. Not emotionally. I didn't want her. I didn't encourage her. I didn't want any of this. I crossed my arms. You didn't stop her either. He flinched. That's the part you don't want to admit, I said. You didn't cheat, but you didn't protect us either. His eyes watered. I was stupid. I was scared of conflict. I thought ignoring her would make her give up. People like her don't give up, I said gently. They escalate. He nodded. I know. Now I know. I looked at him for a long time, at the man I'd loved, the man I married, the man who, despite everything, was still human. Daniel, I said softly, you didn't betray me with your body. He inhaled shakily. You betrayed me with your silence. That hit him harder than any accusation. He covered his face with both hands. I'm so sorry. I let him cry. Not because he deserved comfort, but because humans break in complicated ways. Marcus cleared his throat quietly. If I may. Lauren wasn't delusional. She was strategic. She picks people who won't fight back, People who freeze, people who hope problems go away. Daniel whispered, "That's exactly what I did." I nodded, "And that's exactly the problem." Silence filled the trauma bay. Finally, I spoke the truth I'd been circling all night. "I'm not filing for divorce today." Daniel's head snapped up. "You're not?" "No," I said. "Today you're a patient. You're concussed. You're under investigation. You're emotionally unstable. Making life decisions right now would be irresponsible." His shoulders dropped in relief, "But I wasn't done. But I am moving out." His face crumbled. "Claire," I raised a hand. "This isn't punishment. It's space. I need clarity. You need accountability. We both need breathing room." He nodded slowly. "If you need time, I'll give you anything." I exhaled. "Good, because I'm choosing myself first. Finally." A soft smile tugged at the corner of his mouth, not happiness, but respect. Marcus stepped forward. "If you ever want someone to talk to, someone sane, I'm around." I laughed quietly. "I might take you up on that." Shift change arrived. New staff swept in. The ER buzzed back to life. As I clocked out, I grabbed my MacBook Air, my coat, and the last of my dignity. Walking out into the cool morning air, Manhattan glowing under sunrise, I finally felt something I hadn't felt in years. Light, free, and painfully, beautifully alive. Justice had been served. The truth was out. Consequences had fallen, and the healing was finally mine. 6 months later, Manhattan felt different, or maybe I was different. Spring sunlight spilled through the window of my new apartment in Brooklyn Heights, landing softly on the open Kindle resting beside my morning Starbucks cup. The city hummed quietly below, car horns, distant laughter, and the gentle rhythm of people starting their days. For the first time in years, that sound didn't overwhelm me. It soothed me. I pulled the blanket tighter around my shoulders, sipped my latte, and let the moment breathe. My life had rebuilt itself in small, steady steps. A new apartment with warm light and plants I somehow kept alive, a healthier work schedule, therapy sessions I once thought I didn't need, and mornings like this, slow, calm, unremarkably beautiful. Daniel and I were no longer living together. We weren't divorced. We weren't back together. We were something in between. Two people learning to tell the truth, even when it hurt. He'd started therapy, switched departments, took accountability with a quiet determination that surprised me. Sometimes he sent short updates, nothing emotional, nothing heavy, just "I hope you're resting. I'm sorry again. For everything." And healing, surprisingly, didn't feel like revenge or triumph. It felt like peace. Sometimes peace looks like distance. Sometimes peace looks like a second chance. Sometimes peace is simply choosing yourself. My phone buzzed. A message from Marcus. "Morning, Dr. Claire. Hope today treats you gently." I smiled. He'd become an unexpected friend, steady, thoughtful, someone who understood chaos because he'd survived it too. We grabbed coffee sometimes, talked about work, talked about boundaries, talked about how people like Lauren leave emotional earthquakes behind them. And we laughed. Really laughed. I wasn't in love. Not yet. But I was open to something new, someday. Outside, the sunlight hit the river in a soft ripple. I closed my eyes and let the warmth settle into my chest. 6 months ago, in the fluorescent glare of an ER trauma bay, everything I believed about my life had collapsed. But in the quiet mornings that followed, piece by piece, I learned something important. You don't heal by forgetting what happened. You heal by choosing what comes next. I closed my Kindle, stood up, and opened the window. Cool spring air flowed in, lifting the curtains. A new day, a new beginning, a new version of me. Gentler, stronger, and finally free. And for the first time in a long time, I smiled without pain.
And that wraps up today's story. Now we want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments, and let's see how far these stories reach. If this story moved you or gave you chills, give it a like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories. One last thing, rate the story from 1 to 10 in the comments. Your feedback helps us bring you even better ones next time. Thanks for watching. We appreciate you being part of this storytelling journey.